the VA North Texas healthcare system on April 3rd, 2003, with 4 veterans from Desert Storm campaign of 1991. We're honoring the Gulf War vets that are in our population here and visitors today, and we're looking forward to this program to talk about the action that happened 12 years ago. Of course, we're right in the middle of the new campaign, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Welcome.
I'm Alan Clark. I'm Public Affairs Officer of the Dallas VA Medical Center. Delighted to have you all join us today for this 16th Veterans Forum in 4 years, and focusing on different highlights of American military history and having people who are there come and tell their stories. We're delighted that all of you have joined us today. We have several people from the executive office, secretarial staff that are around the sides of the room with the yellow ribbons and so forth. And if you don't have yours yet, raise your hand, I'll get one to you. And our ushers around the outside, as people come up, be sure to try to get them up to a chair inside. And we welcome the media that's here. I know Fox 4 News is here, KRLB Radio is here. We're expecting a couple of other people from other channels to be here also. I'd like to begin with the welcome by our Associate Director, Bill Cox. Bill is an Air Force veteran, and his father was a combat infantryman with 2 awards of the Combat Infantryman's Badge, Bronze Star Medal for Valor. So we have a second generation veteran that's the Associate Director of our Medical Center. Bill.
Thank you, Alan. Again, I just want to echo Alan's comments and welcome everybody to our Veterans Forum. This is a special program, and my hat's off to Alan Clark. This was his brainchild. And I tell you what, this is one of the best programs that we have, and we have a lot of great programs out here, but this is a great experience for us as staff people to actually hear firsthand the experiences that our veterans have faced. Also, I just want to comment that in light of times, there's a lot of dates we all have that's drilled into our mind. I mean, there's those special dates. I remember the Kennedy assassinations, Martin Luther King assassination, but I also remember in January 1991 when all of a sudden across the news, we remember the date and the air attack of these veterans and the other veterans that served in the Persian Gulf. I mean, it's something that when we turned on our television that we had never seen or experienced before. I mean, it was right there in front of us. And I tell you, as an American and as a veteran, it made me so proud to see our armed forces actually conduct and train and deliver the way they were doing. In today's times, I also remember 9/11, September 11th. How could we forget that tragedy? And the patriotism and the way Americans stood and united together, and we were ready to face anything. And then, again, in today's time, we have troops at war. But folks, I'm hearing and seeing a lot of things on television that actually disappoints me as an American and as a veteran. And I know that us as staff members, as veterans, as Americans, the one thing we want to do is stand up and thank our veterans for the service that they delivered, because freedom is not free. And we owe great gratitude to our nation's veterans. And when our current veterans return, let's welcome them with open arms. The other thing I'd just like to mention is we have a few things going on. In back, we have a table. And as you know, many of our staff are veterans and in the reserves. And to date, we've had 20 staff that have been activated. 4 of those have returned, so we have 16 that are still serving. What we're doing back there is taking donations, and we'd like to send care packages to our staff and notes to tell them that we're proud of them and we're awaiting their return. So if you're interested, please, we'd invite you to do that. I do want to thank our panel members for taking time out of their schedule, and I want to thank you and look forward to a great program. Again, welcome and thank you so much.
Those that are able, would you please stand for our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance? Our invocation will be presented by Nicholas Bonilla Jr. He's a member of our staff, Medical Administration Service. He was in Desert Shield as a heavy wheel mechanic. Nicholas?
Thank you and good afternoon. This is a day of many that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice in it. Deliver our troops from our enemies and the workers of iniquity. Save them from the wicked men and make haste, O Lord, and watch over them. Fathers, mothers, sisters, and brothers, be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid, for the Lord goes with us. God be merciful unto the people of Iraq. Bless them and bring health and prosperity among all nations. Give our leaders the wisdom and the courage to continue on the path of righteousness. Let the Kuwaiti people come to know your almighty peace and praise thee, O God of hosts. Stretch, we pray, your almighty arm and strengthen and protect our armed forces and the Coast Guard of our country. Support them in the time of battle and keep them safe from evil. Take unto your most gracious protection our country's armed forces and all therein. Preserve them from the dangers of in-theater operations and from the violence of the enemy. Give them the courage to face the foe and skill in their performance of their duties. We commend to your protection and care all the members of our armed forces. O Lord, guide and direct them in the defense of our country. Grant them all of the military men and women, wherever they serve, put their trust in thee. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, amen.
Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by another member of our staff here at the VA Medical Center, Gilbert Ray León, First Sergeant, United States Army, retired in our engineering service. He was a combat heavy engineer in Desert Storm.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gilbert. Please be seated. We welcome Channel 8, who's now arrived to cover this program today. Good to see you, Doug. The way this is going to work today is we have 4 people that are panelists. We had a 5th panelist who's a member of our staff also, works in SPD and acquisition material management, but he was ill today and could not make it. So we send our best regards to Master Sergeant USA retired Bruce Johnson, who is a combat medic with 2 awards from Just Cause in Panama and the Desert Storm operation. He was the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. He's recovering and ill and could not make it today. The other 4 panelists will speak approximately 5 to 6 minutes apiece. This is an all-Army operation today, but I have a tribute to the Marines that I know were involved, and Navy and Air Force at the end of the program. But these are the gentlemen that I located for our panel today. And we welcome them very much for their presentation. And then we'll have a question and answer period at the end of their presentations, where we'll have the mic brought up to the middle for any of y'all to ask individual questions. Lots of times we just have kind of a Q&A by me, but this was the best way to hear their stories across the battlefield. I'd like to start for each of these 4 Army people that are representing us today to read a quote that General Vuono read and said on October 12, 1990, in the midst of Desert Shield. He said, "The quality of our Army stands out in stark relief in the Arabian Desert. Everywhere I went, our soldiers demonstrated high standards of discipline and an impressive commitment to what our nation has asked of them. They have great faith in their training, in their weapons, and in their leaders. There is no idle chest thumping or empty boasting among our soldiers. Rather, each of them is soberly and quietly confident if he wants a fight, several soldiers told me, he's come to the right place. Well, we have 4 people that are on our panel today who were in that fight. I'd like to start with our first presentation by Fritz Hager. He graduated from the Military Academy at West Point in 1989 in the Desert Storm program, the Desert Storm campaign. He was a tank platoon leader. He was deployed to Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and he was attached to the Tiger Brigade with the U.S. Marines and participated in the liberation of Kuwait. In addition, and it's kind of interesting that a couple of these men, the 2 tank platoon leaders, specifically mentioned that they brought all their men home safe in their bio. He said specifically that he brought his 15 soldiers home safely. He was awarded the Silver Star, the nation's 3rd highest award for valor for gallantry in action in a minefield near Al-Mutla Ridge outside of Kuwait City. I probably didn't pronounce it right, doesn't matter. Right now, Fritz continues to serve as Vice Chairman and Director of NSG Corporation. He's a sales executive at Voyager Expanded Learning. It's an education initiative focused on eliminating illiteracy in public schools. Since the onset of Operation Iraqi Freedom, he served as a military analyst and on-air commentator for WFAA, the Dallas affiliate of ABC and CNN. I'd like to present Fritz Hager at this time for our first presentation. Welcome, Fritz Hager.
Thank you. Let me start by saying I feel really honored to be here with such a great collection of Americans. Veterans are our most treasured possession, and to be here in a room full of veterans and those who serve veterans really is a great honor. I thank you for your service while you're in uniform, and I thank you for your service to our veterans. I want to say I feel a little bit like George C. Scott and Patton standing up behind this flag, so if I start cursing, I apologize. My first order from Alan was to orient you to our map over here. Ulrich has been gracious enough to provide it. Those of you in the back, I'm sure you won't be able to see it, but let me point out just a couple of things. There's a line that goes along here, and that is actually the outline of the nation of Kuwait. So that right there is Kuwait City, a town that's in the news here recently, Basra, so that's in Iraq. And so down here you have Saudi Arabia and the neutral zone between Saudi Arabia and Iraq. I'll tell you just a little bit briefly about kind of my experience. I deployed in October as part of Desert Shield. We moved to a place of God-forsaken earth that looked like we were on the surface of the moon, I guess. Sat there for 3 months while we were afraid to start our tanks, because if we started them, they would be deadlined. Not exactly a great confidence builder going into combat. But fortunately, in December of that year, we received the M1A1s that had been sitting in Germany waiting for us to fight in the Fulda Gap. And so we were fortunate enough to then go into battle with the best banged battle tank that the world has ever produced, the M1A1. We were originally part of the 1st Cav Division. We deployed from Fort Hood with them. We were the Divisional Reserve of the Theater Reserve, which meant we had almost no chance of seeing any action whatsoever. We've got a 1st Cav guy here on the stage with us, so I'll try and hold some of my comments, but they didn't like us much, and so they gave us to the Marines. So we were the only Army brigade to fight while we were attached to the Marines. General Walt Boomer, who's commander of the Marine Corps forces over there, was our commanding general. So the 1st Army Tiger Brigade, I call us the Lost Brigade because none of the Army publications talk about what we did, since we did it with the Marines, and none of the Navy's or the Marines publications talk about what we did because we were the Army. So you're going to be the select few who actually hears what we did. We started off, I call it the armpit of Kuwait, where the border moves here from the north to the west. And our mission was to move to engage the reserve force here. If you remember, they had kind of their conscripts that surrounded the border here, where they had all those obstacles, and then here they had some operational reserves, and the Republican Guards were farther north. Our mission was to first go in, engage the operational reserves, and then our follow-on mission was to move to the north side of Kuwait City and block the exodus of any forces there. It's a 4-day war. The first 2 days we pretty much drove. We saw guys who were looking for their first chance to surrender and really had very limited opportunities to engage. On day 3, when we hit this operational reserve here, was when we had our most significant action. We never saw any resistance above probably a company-sized element. So similar to what you see on the news today, the Iraqis were never able in our sector to mount an orchestrated battalion or brigade level attack. It was usually small unit actions. We traveled from there to a place just outside of Kuwait City called Al Jara. It's a suburb of Kuwait, and there's a dominant piece of terrain, a ridge line that overlooks what we now all know as the Highway of Death. The Highway of Death led out of Kuwait City and was the road to Basra, and many of the Iraqis were using that as a route to escape, and so we received the mission to go seal off the highway. I'll give a little bit of credit to our Air Force friends, if there's some in the room. They did a tremendous job of creating, I think, the world's largest traffic jam. When we showed up, there was a tremendous amount of wreckage. One of the interesting things about that battle was apparently the images from the highway were a significant factor in then President Bush's decision to stop the war. Having been up and down that highway myself, I can tell you there were probably no more than 100 dead Iraqis on that entire highway, that entire 2-3 mile stretch that I viewed. Most of them, as soon as they saw the Air Force, ran for the hills. And so there was tremendous destruction of vehicles, of buses, and of cars that the Iraqis had taken out, but not the loss of life that you would expect. While we were there, we did stop the flow along the highway. We took over 300 prisoners right there at the intersection coming out of El Jara, and that's where we were at the conclusion of hostilities, manning a checkpoint in Kuwait City. I have tremendous empathy for the guys over there now who are manning checkpoints. Of all the things I did in the war, the scariest thing was hopping out of my tank and walking up to the window of a car to tell somebody to turn around and go back. The brigade commander didn't like my earlier tactic, which was to fire 50 caliber machine gun rounds down the highway. But I guarantee you mine was much more effective than his technique. Just a word on the troops. The American soldier is the greatest thing on the face of this earth. The courage, the sacrifice, the sacrifice is something that hopefully a new generation of media is beginning to learn. One of the pleasures I've had in working with Channel 8 here the last couple of weeks is I get to hear all about Byron Harris. And poor Byron, I think if you took me and put me in the desert and had to keep up with the Marines, I'd be in bad shape. Well, Byron's a couple of years my senior, and apparently from what they've told me, he's ready to come home. So hopefully this battle for Baghdad wraps up here in the next couple of days, and Byron can come home. And more importantly, hopefully all our soldiers, sailors, and airmen can come home. And I know when they get here, they'll have the great folks like you ready to take care of them. Thank you for allowing me to be here today, Alan, and I look forward to the rest of the comments here.
Thank you. I want to welcome WB33 that's come, I believe. Is that who y'all represent? Good. Thank you for being here. Our second presenter is Ulrich Breckbuhl. He is another graduate of the Military Academy at West Point, class of 1986. I know it seems like we're heavy on them. We are, because that's where I went 40 years ago, and that's where I located these folks. So they've got their stories to tell, obviously. Ulrich is currently President and Chief Executive Officer of Migratech, Inc., which is an over-the-counter firm based here in town, and I won't go into what they do because I wouldn't understand it, but it's a high-tech type company based here. He's also a graduate of the Harvard Graduate School of Business Administration with an MBA. He was a captain in the United States Army, 1st Cavalry Division, was an operations officer for that 850-man armored battalion during Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. He was awarded the Bronze Star Medal for exceptional meritorious combat service and performance under pressure during 9 continuous hours of combat. I'd like to present Ulrich Breckbuhl at this time.
Thank you, Alan. As Alan mentioned, I was with the 1st Cavalry Division. In response to Fritz's comments, I will tell you the 1st Cav was a powerful enough force that we felt we could be generous and provide some of that power to our brothers in arms in the Marine Corps, and we're proud to do so. They acquitted themselves with honor. I would like to also just echo Fritz's comments about the way I feel being asked to be here and be in the presence of folks who really over many, many decades provided tremendously valuable service in situations that were far worse than anything that I'm sure I ever saw. My hat is off to you, and I appreciate and thank you for your service. 17 Cav, which is a divisional cavalry squadron for 1st Cav Division, actually was in a unique setting. When we got over to the desert, we actually got there with a bunch of old equipment, much like Fritz did. Actually had a squadron that was made up of old Bradleys and old Cobra gunships and OH-58s, nothing like a 58 Delta or an Apache. And so our first task, actually, once we got there, was to go through new equipment training transition and literally outfit our entire set of ground units with brand new equipment. To do that in the desert was actually a very interesting feat. The 1st Cav Division literally created gunnery ranges because it was all new equipment that we were getting, new vehicle characteristics and what have you. So that was an interesting environment in which to field new equipment and learn how to fight. Needless to say, when the time came, we had tremendous confidence in that equipment and really felt blessed that the American people and the American nation had provided us with equipment that capable. I'll break my comments really into just 3 quick sections. The first section really being the Desert Shield portion, and I mentioned that we went through the actual new equipment transition training. The second significant event there was the 1st Cav Division. Fritz had mentioned they were the Division Reserve. Well, the division was actually the Army Reserve, the Corps Reserve, and so consequently we were initially sent up to provide a screening force for all of the units that ultimately would start the Great Left Hook. And so 1st Cav Division went up to provide a screen up roughly in this area. And of course, in true cavalry fashion, 1st Cav, 17 Cav was asked to precede and provide the early warning in the event that the Iraqis might launch a preemptive strike. Once it turned into the actual Desert Storm portion of the engagement, we were actually in the reserve again. And so we're given 3 missions. The first mission, after the hostility started, the ground war started, was actually to reinforce the Syrian and Egyptian forces which are out here in the western part of Kuwait, heading up. That was actually an interesting event because they all had Soviet equipment and very similar to what the Iraqis had, and so we typically had about a third of our unit facing them to make sure that our flank was safe. That turned out to be rather helpful. Having said that, the next mission that we were given, although actually never launched on, was actually to charge up an area called the Wadi al-Batim. And that was in theory where the Iraqis thought that the entire force would attack, because it was a dried out riverbed, the only major terrain feature in that area, and so that's what the Iraqis naturally thought the Westerner would have to follow, since the sand is terrainless and unable to navigate. Thank heavens we didn't have to do that, because we had spent the last 45, 50 days prepping that area with artillery and all sorts of things, and had drawn a ton of troops into that area, and so we were not terribly excited about that. Finally, the mission we were actually launched on was to reinforce the guys that you'll hear here to the right, to my right, talk about in a minute, and that was the great end run, if you will, from out in the western areas up and around towards Basra to basically cut off the Republican Guard. We, in essence, ended up doing a passage alliance with elements of the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment, and then in our 96-hour run to Basra, ended up tangling with folks that you've heard of today, the Medina Division and the Hammurabi Division. There was a 3rd division, Republican Guard Division, that we ran into called the Tawakana, which I've never seen on the map here recently, so I don't know if they continue to exist or not. And we ended up then literally about 15 miles outside of Basra in an area up here known as the Ramallah oil fields. And I will tell you that it was very frustrating in the last, I guess, 60 days that I was in Iraq. to have to sit there and watch as the Republican Guard basically beat up and killed literally hundreds and thousands of their own civilians. We fed literally the last 60 days in Iraq. We spent most of our time feeding and taking care of the refugees from Basra who fled out towards where they knew we were so that we would be able to provide them with medical aid, food, and the like. Sort of in closing, I'd like to just say that I've spent a good chunk of time overseas in Europe and elsewhere, and folks always ask me what makes the American Army different. Why were you able, in essence, you as a country, able to do what you did in such a short period of time? And I've thought about it a lot, and I think the answer is very simple. I mean, folks can talk about the equipment we have and talk about the training we get, and at the end of the day, those are both without peer. But it truly is the non-commissioned officer and the enlisted personnel of the U.S. Armed Forces that are just head and shoulders above everything else. I've spent time with the French military, with the German military, and there's just no comparison. So to those of you that have served in that capacity, my hat's off and thank you very much.
Our third presenter today is Rob Holmes. Rob is the founding partner of Black Knight Partners, a Dallas-based investment firm. He served as an armor officer in the U.S. Army, was decorated with the Bronze Star for Valor under enemy fire during Operation Desert Storm. He's also a 1989 graduate of the Military Academy of West Point. He and Fritz are classmates. He earned his MBA at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In 1999, Rob, along with 4 other Desert Storm veterans and Kent State University Press, published Eyes of Orion. It's a combat narrative of their experience in Saudi Arabia and Iraq. And I bought a copy of it. I haven't read it yet. I didn't have to prepare as much for this as I have for some of the other programs, admittedly. An interesting thing about Rob is that on 23 February of 01, his tank platoon, must have been 91, his tank platoon was the lead platoon for the lead company and the lead task force for the division, the 24th Infantry, as they attacked into Iraq and conducted their mission to secure the Euphrates River Valley and destroy the enemy in that area. He also said in his bio that every one of his men came back. I'd like to welcome Rob. I'd like to welcome Mrs. Holmes, if you'd please stand, and I'd like to recognize your presence in coming with Rob.
It's always nice for me to be around veterans. I have a father who was a World War II veteran, an uncle who was also a World War II veteran, another uncle who served in Korea, and another uncle who served in Vietnam. So it's exciting for me to be here because I feel like I'm around family. And the work that y'all do here, the support for each other, it's really a neat environment to be here, so I appreciate the opportunity. On August 2nd, 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. On August 2nd, 1990, I was a 23-year-old second lieutenant living in Savannah, Georgia. I was a bachelor. At 3 a.m., my phone rang, and it was the battalion staff duty officer. I was on a date, and he said, "Victory Thunder, sir." And I said, "You gotta be kidding." And he said, "No." So I left and I came on in, and before I knew it, we were packing our bags to go to Saudi Arabia. The 24th Infantry Division was the heavy component of the Army's Rapid Deployment Force, the 18th Airborne Corps. The division was commanded by General Barry McCaffrey, who perhaps you all have seen on the news recently. We deployed in about 2 weeks' time, and I landed in Saudi Arabia the second week of August, 1990. It was 135 degrees. We were the first M1A1 tanks in theater. We had 55 tanks, and the Iraqis had 5,500. Fortunately, we had the Air Force, we had the Navy, and as Fritz mentioned, I really grew to appreciate the combined arms and all the different forces, because at 55 versus 5,500, we wouldn't have lasted very long. We survived the desert. Every day we got more food, we got more water. We got more fuel, more spare parts, and we got more soldiers coming in. And before we knew it, the mission became less and less defensive, and more we talked about going north. And we spent a couple of months thinking about what it would be like to go north. On January 17th, 1991, I was woken up again, this time by my company commander's gunner. I was asleep on the back deck of my tank, and he says, "Hey sir, Desert Storm's been executed. What's that mean?" And I said, "It means we're going to war." And I looked up, and the sky was full of planes headed north. They'd keep their lights on until they crossed the border, and then once they crossed the border, they'd turn them off and they'd continue their mission. We were probably about, I don't know, maybe 30 k's south of the border at the time. I rolled over and turned on the BBC and listened to the BBC call to war for the rest of the night. The next day began about a 6-week air war campaign, and toward the end of that campaign, we moved about 200 kilometers west. The 24th ID was the farthest west unit in theater, and our mission was to attack into the Euphrates River Valley, secure the valley, and then envelop the Republican Guard by turning east, turning right, into a meeting engagement and destroy all forces in theater. Fortunately, we had folks pushing the Iraqis up out of Kuwait to our east, but our job was to go as far, as fast as we could. So we attacked in February 23rd, crossed the border, 1910 hours. I was 10 minutes late. And we continued north at 8 degrees until our first checkpoint. We got there in the middle of the night, continued on, and about dawn the next day, we got reports from our divisional cavalry and our scout platoon that there were enemy up ahead. We had our first engagement at about dawn. They were dismounted infantry. They were tired. They were not well equipped, not high morale, and in a matter of seconds, we pretty much were able to dispatch with the enemy. We continued on north for about the next day and a half, and on the third day of the ground war, we found ourselves about 250 kilometers inside Iraq. There's a little airfield just south of the Euphrates River called Jalaba Airfield, and Jalaba sits about 100 k's or so west of Basra. It was an important airfield because the Iraqis used it to resupply. We wanted to use it to resupply as well. And we had to get to the airfield and secure the airfield before the Republican Guard got there on their way back to Baghdad. Fortunately, we did. At dawn the next morning, we attacked the airfield with a brigade of the 24th ID and spent the next 45 minutes destroying the Republican Guard battalion, dug-in tanks, infantry, and about 1,000 Iraqi soldiers. It's a day that I won't forget for the rest of my life. After that, we continued the attack east toward Basra, and by the end of the 4th day of the war, we found ourselves having traveled about 450 kilometers. We were about 30 k's west of Basra, and had been in contact with the enemy pretty much the whole 4 days of the ground war. Again, my company commander's gunner came running up to my tent, and he said, "Hey, LT, CO says, don't shoot unless fired upon," which I couldn't believe. I was really concerned that they were changing the rules of engagement, that we're getting this close to the end, and now they're going to change the rules on us. But as it turned out, a lot quicker than I ever thought would happen, the Iraqis were going to surrender. And a couple hours later, President Bush addressed the nation, and we heard that surrender. I was home back in Georgia 3 weeks later. I got home March 21st, one of the best days of my life. We were one of the first groups to go over, and fortunately, we were one of the first groups to come back. As I think about my reflections on the service there, my family, the veterans in my family who have served, I think that the American soldier, his selflessness has no bounds. The American soldier is a striking contradiction on the battlefield because the American soldier is the most lethal weapon the world has ever seen. And that's his job. There's nothing to be hesitant about saying that. The American soldier is the most lethal weapon the world has ever seen. The American soldier is also the most gracious person a battlefield has ever seen. And I think we've seen that in every conflict this country has ever entered into. And I think you're also seeing it today in Iraq, as you see our soldiers feeding Iraqis, caring for them, not just the non-combatants, not just the civilians, but also the Iraqi soldiers who are no longer combatants and have been taken prisoner or who are casualties. The American soldier is the most gracious person the battlefield has ever seen. And then I think the last thing that I think about is once in, never out. Once you've served, you always serve, and you serve in different capacities. You serve in the private sector, perhaps you continue to serve in the military, but once in, you're never out. And there's always a feeling of contribution, there's always a calling, and you need to do something special. And I think that's what makes this group here very special, because this is a group here that has served their country, and in many different ways continues to serve your country. So it's an honor for me to be here. I know the other gentlemen on the panel, because we're sitting here before folks who make this country great, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
I'm not sure I mentioned that Rob has been interviewed on Channel 11 a couple of times, and actually went national yesterday with Fox 4 National. It's going to be on Fox 4 National Saturday. You know, we've got some real celebrities up here. All right. Our fourth presenter has been involved with us and is very much so involved in the veteran community in a lot of wonderful activities. Major United States Army retired Ira Richardson was a tactical intelligence officer, airborne qualified, air assault badge. He is a distinguished military graduate of the Reserve Officer Training Corps program at LSU in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. During the Desert Storm campaign, he was Assistant G2 Operations with the 101st Airborne Division. He is a financial advisor with Bank of America Investment Services. If his wife were here, she would be introduced, but I'd like to mention who she is. He is married to Lieutenant Colonel Robin Richardson, Medical Specialty Corps, registered dietitian. She has been deployed to Southwest Asia with 807th MedCom out of Seagoville. There's several of our people who are in that unit. I want to welcome Ira Richardson today to our program.
Thank you, Alan. Well, it's humbling to be here, but from our vantage point, you all look marvelous. So thanks for staying the course. Just briefly, and I know why he's on television, because he's much better looking. But I also know the 24th had a tremendous mission which they performed magnificently. So I'm a great champion of what they did. We were part of the 18th Airborne Corps, 24th Victory Division, the 101st, the 82nd, and I think we had some French guys in there too. French 6th Armor, who did a fine job. You know, I'm on the other side of the fence now. I'm a stay-at-home dad. My wife is linked up with 4th Infantry Division and is on her way to Kuwait after not being able to go to Turkey. So we all know what it is to get along with everybody and to try to make the best out of what we have. I can tell you it's a lot harder being at home than it was being over there, and I just applaud all single parents, grandparents, and the family support system that's back home. So for all you do, thank you. And we all know, if we're honest about it, for every one combat soldier, there are 6 soldiers in the rear supporting the mission. But also, let's not forget there's 3 special ops people out in front of us who are truly, truly heroic. Their physical and mental abilities are beyond comprehension. And you have a few of those here today. And you certainly have people who have risen to that standard. One comes to mind, Dick Agnew, who is a model of citizenship, of physical fitness, of mental toughness, and so Dick, when I see the special ops guys, I think of you. Distinguished Service Cross from Korea, so thanks. he's my hero. But there are a lot of other faces I recognize in the audience, sir, that made tremendous sacrifices as soldiers, as prisoners of war, as people lost in the fog of war. But let me just take you through a little bit of what we did. I joined the 101st in November of '90. I was living a very cush life as the operations officer for Field Station Berlin. I deployed to Berlin in 1987 after a tour with the 101st. Our commander was chosen to be the Berlin Brigade commander. And as a 502nd Infantry guy, it gave me a chance to continue my regimental affiliation with the 4th, 5th, and 6th Battalions, 502nd in Berlin. Now, why I tell you that story is, everything's connected, 6 degrees of separation. I ended up nearly drowning in Wadi al-Batin, largely because of a former brigade commander of the 502nd, some guy named Powell. Chose us to go to that Wadi right there during Desert Shield to do Alan, I don't know if you ever heard the term, but to be a retainer, which was a euphemism for die in place. Rob talked about the 5,500 tanks. We were one brigade who was peeled off and sent there basically to stop the 3 Iraqi divisions from coming into Saudi Arabia and attacking the kingdom. And as we went up there, and as some of the guys talked about, the ground was as hard as the desk. And we, being light soldiers, we didn't have tanks. Entrenching tools. So we started this hapless job trying to dig in. We knew what the battlefield calculus was. I volunteered to go because I was the S2 for the 2nd Brigade during a previous life, so they were my guys, and so I wanted to go. So the division commander, General P, was gracious enough to let me go. But here we are out there doing a retaining mission, a die-in-place mission. Well, fortunately, the enemy never came, but the rains did. And that's one of the paradoxes. When you think of the desert and 135-degree heat, well, there is a winter there, and there is a rainy season. And it rained and rained and rained. And fortunately, some guy named Franks flew in one day and gave us everything we wanted and more. And then he flew off. Because remember, we were there to die in place. And but thank God for the special ops guys, and thank God for the United States Air Force, and thank God for a lot of people who eliminated that threat. So thank you. Team of teams. Start together, finish together. When I think of Barry McCaffrey, I think of the story I tell my children about. You start together and you finish together. And General McCaffrey embodies that goal. And that's what we do every day here, and that's what Alan and his people do. We try to get everybody to get up, do the very best you can, satisfy that person that looks back at you in the mirror, and hope you wake up the next day. And that's pretty much how we thought we were there during the Desert Shield part, because we really thought the Iraqis were going to finish their attack into Kuwait by coming into Saudi Arabia. So we had the 24th on our right, our west, our east, and the 82nd, the French. Interestingly, the G3 ops officer for the French 6, he and I had served at a peacekeeping force in Egypt in 1985 in the Sinai. You may remember President Carter negotiated the Camp David Accords, and we swapped off the 82nd, and we did one-year tours. And so I actually knew the future G3 ops for the 6th Army, so I was able to get tagged to do some liaison work with them. Essentially, our mission was, as General Powell said, was to cut off the head of the snake and kill the rest of it. So it's not really on this map, but we were supposed to do the big left hook. We ended up 80 kilometers, 50 miles outside of Baghdad, and I'm very hopeful that my wife will go and complete the job we didn't. And And I just think we should have finished it, and we were capable of finishing it. But we're soldiers, and we know that soldiers, you're well trained and you follow orders, and you do the very best you can. And I think you've heard at least 3 stories of exemplary conduct. I'd like to leave 2 points before we start the question and answers. First of all, prior to the beginning of Desert Storm, Task Force 101, the Aviation Brigade, did a special ops mission with SOCSA, Special Operations Command, to take out some radar systems that allowed the beginning of the air campaign. Again, some of those silent warriors that will never make the news, but absolutely critical to bringing all the troops home. So that was the beginning of the war as far as the 101st was concerned. The second point is that we traveled, even though the 101st was put together as an air assault heliborne operation in Vietnam, we really had never tried it. So there was a lot of people, including General Locke, who was the 18th Airborne Corps Commander, my former Assistant Mission Commander, Fort Campbell, in the mid-80s. So we weren't quite sure, so we had to convince a lot of people. Fortunately, we had 24th who executed their mission magnificently, but we really needed to go farther, faster than we'd ever tried before. And we did it, in spite of the shamils and the weather and everything else. So that's a great testament to our military-industrial complex and the people who build, equip, and provide the combat power for the service members. So we owe a big thank you to the people who build all the stuff that they gave us. Last, let me let you keep one point in mind. We did not bring everybody back home. And we still have people that are unaccounted. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't remember them and their families. I have to tell you, with my wife going over with the 4th Infantry Division, first of all, I pity the Iraqis. 2, I have to tell you, I heard this story of this young Private First Class Jessica with 2 broken arms and a broken leg and a couple of gunshot wounds, firing off her last rounds. This is a supply person. And I was just saying, I want her on my team. And I would ask you, when our service members get home, you do everything you can in your station in life to make sure they get trained and employed and reintegrated as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ira. Ken, I don't want you to get out of my sight. I just noticed you got back. We've been having these compliments for the Air Force. Well, Colonel Ken Cordier, raise your hand, Ken, is on our community council, as is Dick and Joe Pena in the audience. But Ken Cordier served 6.5 years in POW camps in North Vietnam, is a former president of the NAMP House, the former POW. He's a great veteran and supports us a lot. I'd like to recognize him, and by doing that, recognize his Air Force contributions. Maybe a little bit of why Jessica was such a good trooper out there is I found out yesterday that my nephew, who is in Hungary training the Kurds as translators to accompany our troops and so forth, was her basic training company commander. So I have a connection with her, and I hope that that had part of what to do with what a good troop she was. At this point in time, we have the Q&A. Will somebody bring the mic up in the middle? If you would come up to the mic in the middle, introduce yourself, and ask your questions, please. We'll have time after the program for the media to ask their questions. Right now, this is for our audience. Any questions from the audience, please come up.
My name is Sergeant First Class Randy Stam, and I was a Gulf War veteran. And I want to know if the government is going to treat our soldiers that are over there now like they're treating us. I've lost 3 perfectly good jobs. I'm a single parent, and I'm living off a disability, and I'm still fighting to survive. And is it fair to the soldiers that do their job, now that I take 44 pills a day, is that okay?
Well, obviously, Randy, thank you. Let me answer that question. Obviously, after every action out there, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, whatever, Randy, there are going to be issues with different people needing help. We have 3,100 people in the VA North Texas healthcare system who have been here. We may not have always done just the right thing for everybody, and you may have had special challenges, but we've got 3,100 dedicated people here who are attempting to help all the veterans, men and women from all of our different operations and campaigns in American military history. When there's different individual issues, we have our patient reps, a whole lot of other people. I do know, and I can tell you, that we made some mistakes first time around, Gulf War, Desert Storm. This time around, I know that about a month ago, I saw a letter, we all saw a letter, that Secretary Principi of the VA sent to Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, saying, we want to get this baseline out there relative to the health care issues relative to our veterans, so we can do a better job this time around. Dr. Robert Haley has been doing research. He's on a special advisory committee that Secretary Principi put him on. We're going to try to do a better job this time. For any of the different, there are plenty of people here to take care of you. Any type of issue, you or any other Gulf War vets or people coming back from this campaign have special programs 2 years after the combat zone. So we're doing better. We're here, and there's a place here for every single person. The people that you know that may have a continuing challenge, send them to our social workers, our psychologists, whatever. There are people here for everything that you could possibly need. We'll do the best job we can. Okay, questions? Fritz, would you mention the action, please, in which you received your Silver Star? You didn't really address that so much.
Sure. The Al Butler Ridge is a ridge overlooking the Highway of Death. Our infantry company had just been ordered to clear the police post. A classmate of mine, Rothstan Stemniak, also was awarded the Silver Star because he and one other guy took 35 Iraqis out of the police post just by themselves. So while that battle was going on, my tank platoon received the mission to go down and secure the actual highway intersection. I informed my commander that there was a wire obstacle and looked like some mines in front of me, and I wanted to make sure he really wanted me to go down there. He checked with battalion and said, yes, we do need to seize the highway. And so right about that time, my loader lifted his shoulder guard and sliced the antenna cable. So I lost the ability to transmit on my radio. So I hopped off the front slope of my tank like I'd done 1,000 times before, and looked down between my two boots, and there was a nice surface-laid Italian anti-personnel mine, and realized that what I thought were rocks were actually a series of mines. I'd driven my platoon into a minefield. So I walked between the mines to my wingman's tank, who also had the mine plow, and banged on the side of the tank, and Private Burton, who was a replacement troop from Fort Carson, Colorado, who'd been with our unit for about a month at that point, not the year that everybody else had been together. And I told Burton, I said, Burton, grab your wire cutters, your M16, it's time for you to earn your combat pay. And he said, you want me to come down there? And I said, yeah, come on down. So we got the wire cutters, and we're walking down to the fence, the barbed wire fence that was supposed to be the border of the minefield. And while we were going down there, the Iraqi dismounted infantry began firing on our tanks where we just left. So while there was a firefight going back and forth, Private Burton and myself were about 50 meters from our tanks, not the place a tanker wants to be during a firefight. We had handheld wire cutters. You know, if you go down to Home Depot, you can buy a nice big set of wire cutters for about $10. We had the little pliers on. And so while the fire was going back and forth, Burton and I are sitting there cutting one strand of concertina wire at a time, making jokes about how if we'd known we were going to be doing this, we would have had those little grip exercisers for the last 6 months in the desert. But we finally cut down the fence, attached the grappling hook to it, and then dropped the mine plow and began plowing through the minefield. While we were going through the minefield, the tank was attacked again by dismounted infantry. Again, not the place a tanker wants to be when the bullets start flying, outside of the tank, about 10 feet behind. My company commander's tank took out the dismounts, and then we were able to go on through the rest of the obstacle, went down to the highway, destroyed several tanks, and captured, over the next 24 hours, 300 enemy prisoners of war.
Thank you, Fritz. Do we have any questions from the audience before we close here? Last chance. Okay. What I would like to do at this point is announce that at the end of the program, any Gulf War vets in the audience, after we sing God Bless America, led by Sharon Balthrop, who is our acting medical media service chief, I want you all to come up front with our panelists, anybody that served in the Desert Shield or Desert Storm, and come up front for a picture. And if you sign and put your name and address over here, we'll send you a copy of that group shot. And so right now I'd like to close with something I'd like to read, and then Sharon, if you'd come up and lead us in God Bless America. I just got this morning, and it's very timely. I know that we have just 4 Army people here. We've obviously had a lot of credit given to the Air Force and the Navy, and Fritz was with the Marines. I tried around and I couldn't find any Marines for the program, but I'd like to read something that Martin Savage of CNN supposedly said in the last couple of days. He was embedded with the 1st Marine Battalion, and he was talking with 4 young Marines near his foxhole live on CNN. He had been telling the story of how well the Marines had been looking out for and taking care of him since the war started. He went on to tell about the many hardships the Marines had endured since the war began and how they all look after one another. He turned to the 4 and said he had cleared it with their commanders and they could use his video phone to call home. The 19-year-old Marine next to him asked Martin if he would allow his platoon sergeant to use his call to call his pregnant wife back home, whom he had not been able to talk to in 3 months. A stunned Savage, who was visibly moved by the request, shook his head, and the young Marine ran off to get the sergeant. Savage recovered after a few seconds and turned back to the 3 young Marines still sitting with him and asked him which one of them would like to call home first. The Marine closest to him responded without a moment's hesitation, "Sir, if it is all the same to you, we would like to call the parents of a buddy killed. Lance Corporal Brian Busing of Cedar Key, Florida, who was killed on 3/23/03 near Nazaria, to see how they are doing." At that, Martin Savage apparently, supposedly, totally broke down and was unable to speak. All he could get out before signing off was, "Where do they get young men like this?" And I would add, young women like Jessica. We thank all of you that have participated in our program today. We compliment you. We're glad you came back. We're sorry for those that have not come back from this campaign and those that will not be coming back from the current one, and all of our people that have suffered, and all of our MIAs and our former POWs that we get back. With this, we will close with the singing of God Bless America.
Stand and sing with me, please, as we honor our heroes. God bless America, land where I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you very much, Sharon. This concludes our program.
Coalition forces in Iraq is some very tough fighting. That assessment comes from veterans who fought in Iraq in the Persian Gulf War 12 years ago. They talked to Channel 8's Doug Fox today about the war then and now.
It's a 4-day war. The first 2 days we pretty much drove.
It was a quick ground campaign 12 years ago when the four men in this VA hospital panel discussion drove the Iraqis out of Kuwait. It's much different from the current war with its simultaneous air and ground assault. But as coalition forces move into Baghdad with a gun in one hand, they also extend an olive branch in the other.
The American soldier is the most lethal weapon the world has ever seen. The American soldier is also the most gracious person a battlefield has ever seen.
But one of the nagging questions left from the Persian Gulf War is, did coalition forces stop too soon? Should Saddam Hussein have been taken out 12 years ago?
General McCaffrey was my commanding general, and we could have been in Baghdad 2 days later and destroyed the whole place. But that wasn't the mission.
What lies ahead for U.S. troops now, say the veterans, is a very tough road. In 1991, they came close to Baghdad, but seizing the Iraqi capital could be very costly.
If we have to go in and go house by house, building by building, looking for people, it'll be as tough as anything we've seen since World War II. Military operations, urban terrain, the casualties run between 20 and 50% on almost all training exercises.
And some of those who do come home will no doubt join the others in this room at the VA hospital to tell war stories to another generation.
The Gulf War know firsthand the dangers our troops face in Iraq. Some got together today at the Dallas VA Medical Center to share their stories. They also shared their thoughts about the bravery of the American military in combat. Rob Holmes served as a tank platoon leader during Desert Storm.
He said, "Victory thunder, sir." And I said, "You gotta be kidding." And he said, "No." So I left and I came on in, and before I knew it, we were packing our bags to go to Saudi Arabia.
All four of today's panelists say they hope the current war in Iraq ends soon so their brothers and sisters in arms can come home safely.